Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the news channel. So today we are continuing the economic survey. So far we have discussed about the preface in the economic survey. Subsequently, I have discussed about the first topic. What are the global uncertainties and how Indian economy is poised to develop until 2047, given the backdrop of 2025. In the third chapter, we have extensively discussed about various monetary policies and financial policies of the government, particularly in the sectors of financial intermediaries, that is banks, insurances, pensions, stock markets, and primary markets. These are the things that I have discussed up to last class. So today I'm going to start with chapter number 3, where I will be making 2 to 3 videos in this chapter to understand the topic in detail. So to start with, what is this chapter all about? Chapter 3 of economic survey is going to discuss about the so-called external sector of India. Now let me give a brief idea about what do you mean by external sector. Whenever I say external sector, what are the components that will be there in the external sector? External sector, we study it as a balance of payment. So every country will be having trade relations with other countries. So discussing about the trade relationship of one country with other countries is known as external sector. And India as such is exporting some goods and it is importing some goods. India as such is exporting services and importing some services. So whenever we export, we are going to receive dollars. Whenever we import, we are going to pay dollars. That is foreign currencies. So given how much you are exporting, how much you are importing, be it goods, that is called merchandise trade, or services, we have dollars coming inside the country or dollars leaving the country. And that is called, whenever there are more inflow of dollars, balance of payment will be positive for the country. Whenever it is more dollars leaving the country, balance of payments will be negative for the country. And this is a very known fact. Depending upon whether balance of payments is positive or negative, then there will be a sterilization function of RBI. That is, RBI acting upon the monetary policy, RBI acting upon these foreign currencies, where RBI injects the foreign currencies or it is going to take away the foreign currencies from the market. That is called sterilization function. Once we do sterilization function, if there is excess of dollars coming inside your economy, that dollars will be taken out and RBI will keep it in its reserves, and that is called the foreign exchange reserves of India. And whenever we are exporting, we have to look at what are the major exports from India and to which countries we are exporting. And similarly, the same thing will be there in the imports. What are the major things that we are importing, from which countries we are importing, and what is the balance in this, whether we are exporting more, importing more, whether we are exporting more services or whether we are importing more services. All these things will be there in the balance of payments. Subsequently, all this can happen. So whenever I say that this is about India's trade with foreign countries, one thing that we have to always remember is this can be understood only in the broader outline of the global economy. How global economy is present, how global trade is present. So if the global trade or global economy itself is very in a slow position, or if it is progressing in a very slow position, we cannot export more, because for the exports there will be no markets at the global level. So that is one substantial drawback of any country, not only India. If you are going for any other country, if the global demand itself is very good, there will be less number of exports compared to the imports. So whenever we discuss about external segments, we have to discuss about that component that is called what is the global phenomena that is present at this point of time, and what are the chances that this global phenomena is going to improve, so that will act as a positive external on Indian exports. So subsequently, we have to also focus on what are the strengths of a particular country, particularly country like India, in which domains you can export more, where you can focus more. That is another area where we have to focus, and that is the area where India is propelling today. In this economic survey also we have discussed. And what are the areas where we have to improve, considering the inhibitions, that is inhibiting or creating barriers for the export segment of the country or import segment of the country. And then in the last, we will discuss about what is the balance of payments on these things. So in total, this third chapter is divided into 5 topics. Topic 1 discusses about the global situations for this external trade. Topic 2 discusses about the export and import scenarios of India. What is the trade scenario of India? Chapter 3, topic 3 discusses about what are the areas where we have the strengths to promote exports, particularly in this economic survey. One beautiful thing that they have focused is on the textile sector, which is giving immense amount of potential for the Indians in terms of its employment, in terms of its generation, in terms of its exports, in terms of its wide variety of products. So textile sector, they have extensively focused on this, and they have also focused on the emerging types of markets or marketing technologies such as e-commerce. What are the challenges in this e-commerce? What are the positives that India can gain from this e-commerce, and how to go into the global market by capturing this technology called e-commerce? That is one thing that they have discussed. So first thing they discussed about external sector as far as the globe is considered. The second thing is India's trade parameters. What are the exports from India? What are the imports from India? Whether there is balance for us, whether there is balance in favor of us or against us. This is the second topic. The third topic that they discussed is what are the export promotions that we have. That is the thing that they have did. Fourth chapter, they discussed about what are the challenges that will be there in the so-called external segment of this country. And the fifth challenges or fifth thing that they said is how we can make ready our country to be export destination and to capture the global phenomena. So in the last one, they discussed about what are the forex reserves, what is the exchange rate of this country. All these things were discussed. So more or less, chapter 3 as such is divided into 5 topics. These 5 topics, I'll give a brief in this discussion along with the inputs that they have given in the Press Information Bureau on 1st of February 2025. So this will be the point of discussion in today's class, and I'll also give you an overview about how Indian economy is performing in terms of the so-called graphical representation. So this class is entirely going through these graphs and discussing about this in brief, so that in the subsequent classes I'll come to each and every topic and I'll take that and then we can discuss that in detail. So to start with, what is the global phenomena at the trade levels? So if you look at this, after COVID-19, economic survey is quite optimistic about the emerging global strengths. So according to the World Economic Forum, what it showed is the globe is going to be in a positive trend of growth. There has been a substantial growth in the growth rate of the world is increasing from somewhere around 3 to 3.5%. As a result, compared to the last 3 years where there was some shortfall in the growth of the world, in this year and in the upcoming years, there can be some positive signs from the globe. As a result, this is going to create some momentum for India's exports of goods as well as services. As a result, that will be a favorable advantage or favorable thing for India. Global stability is considered. However, the survey also cautions that this is not all the things. There is some increasing challenges of the globe also, particularly from 3 segments: the geopolitical tensions that is happening due to Russia-Ukraine war, and most importantly in the global trade route somewhere around Israel and Palestine region, where you have to cross from Atlantic, get into the Suez Gulf and then get into the so-called Indian Ocean, and the recent comments made by President Trump in the Panama Canal saying that he will take over this Panama barrage. Altogether, this is some challenges that it is creating. So global uncertainties is one of the biggest challenges for the external sector today. The second challenge that survey points out is the changing climates. So climate change is going to be another major determining factor for the global trade. Particularly what the survey comments is, due to the increased dry seasons across the world, the total amount of water levels in the Panama Canal has come down. As a result, due to poor water levels and less quantity of waters, the movement of ship through this Panama, we know this Panama connects the Pacific Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean, and that is a small strait, which is extremely important to turn or to stop the ships to come around the so-called South America and to take a shortest route between Pacific and Atlantic Ocean. Right. Under this context, survey points out that the declining water levels in Panama is one of the biggest challenges that the countries can face. The third thing, obviously, is the protectionist attitude across the world, starting with President Trump's America, or be it the European countries, and the same thing is felt in South Asian countries like India. So the protectionist tendencies across the countries, where they are giving more importance to the domestic factors rather than the globalization factors, might be one of the most important challenges for the world in the upcoming days, which might create some a greater impact on the world trade. So comparing to the growth, the world has grown subsequently at 3.2 to 3.3%. That is a very good thing. But compared to the uncertainties lie at the geopolitical tensions. Second one is the climate change variations, and the third one that we face is the protectionist attitude of majority of the countries, particularly the countries which have advocated a globalization way back in the year 20th century. So that was not present today. That is one challenge that economic survey points out it. So this is the first section that it deals. What is the trends in the globe as far as trade is considered? So it was a mixed trend that we can expect from the world in the year 2026 and subsequent years. Coming to India, the second part deals with India. So in India, what survey points out is the total number of exports in merchandise goods as well as in services has been substantially increased in the last financial year, somewhere around 6%. Equally, we have more number of imports into the country. So import growth rate has increased at 6.6%, whereas the export growth rate has increased to 6%. This is the first observation that economic survey has done. And the second thing that economic survey has done is what are the major exports that we are exporting, and what is the export potential that India has. They have discussed some a little bit of discussion on that. And then the third point that we have to discuss is due to more exports of services, India has got favorable balance of payments in terms of trade in services. But when it goes to the trade in goods, we are still deficit. As a result, if you take the trade in goods as well as trade in services, India is suffering from current account deficit even in the last 2 quarters. So again, current account deficit is something which India has to tackle. But obviously, due to the so-called capital account segments, India has conveniently overcome this current account deficit due to capital account surplus. As a result, the balance of payment was positive for the country. This is the second segment that they said. The third one is they have beautifully discussed about the emerging sectors in this section 2 itself, that is about cotton or textile industry. So economic survey has pointed out that what is the potential that this textile industry has in the country, and what are the challenges, particularly the challenges where there was no integrated supply of cotton or integrated production of these textiles. This is one of the most important challenges that the country is facing. What economic survey says is, in India there are some cotton producing states, such as Gujarat is famous for it. Come to Karnataka you have Maharashtra, you have Andhra Pradesh, you have. But when it comes to the so-called weaving and textile manufacturing, you have some other pockets in the country, such as Tamil Nadu, Haryana, such as West Bengal. These are the countries where you have. And then these are the places where you do not have export potential. Again, you have to make that product to come to the export destinations and you export, which means the market is fragmented, be it in the availability of resources or be it in the places where you are producing the manufacture, and be it the place where you are exporting it. So if you look at 3 components, almost all the things, what we observe is, we observe there is a fragmentation of textile industry, but we have to remember that textile industry is such an industry which is providing a lot amount of employment opportunities, and it is a labor intensive sector, by the way. Not only now, right from traditionally Indian textile sector has been dominated in the entire productions right from the ancient times of India. As a result, that is the potential, or that is the leverage that India has to take on in order to promote its exports. This is what economic survey has beautifully commented, and it has also said about what are the mechanisms that India has to take care in order to mix or integrate the entire production chain, so that we can top the so-called export promotions in the world. Today, if you look why China has been dominating in the export textile exports, or South Asian countries like Vietnam, go to somewhere around Thailand, or go to somewhere around Southeast Asian countries, they are dominating the textile productions in the world. Why? The only reason is they do not have lot amount of production capabilities as India possesses, but their segments was highly systematized, but that was not there in India. So economic survey points out that this is the area where we have to focus on, and that is going to improve the textile sector. The third thing that they focused again in India's trade components is, they have beautifully discussed again about one thing. The discussion is on what are the challenges that e-commerce business in the country has. So as we have discussed this in the financial segment again, so in the e-commerce, one of the most challenges that the country is facing is a lack of integrated digital commerce networks due to the so-called poor technology utilization and due to the so-called poor literacy levels in the country as far as e-commerce business is considered. So only those players who are dominating in the market like Amazon, Flipkart, Right, these players are engaging into this, and they have been capitalizing everything here. But there are no small players who are utilizing these platforms and to commerce it. So e-commerce, if you are going to promote it, it is going to bring the so-called both the players, that is the consumers and the so-called producers, together on one platform, and then the trade can substantially increase. So what government of India is planning is, in the similar way, just like Amazon, we should have some platforms which will not only be making the trade inside the country, but we will also be making the external trade. That is what government of India's comment is as far as this segment is considered. After this, so this is the second segment. The third segment that they have focused on is what are the factors that are promoting the export growth in the country. Obviously, there are some regulatory comments. That is the reason why this economic survey has focused on get out of my way. So whatever the barriers that is there for the private sector, you have to overcome that barriers. We have to capitulate on what is necessary, and then we have to go ahead with it. So they have discussed about what are the factors restricting the export growth and what are the government of India's initiatives in order to overcome this problem. That is a small discussion was there in this segment. The fourth one is coming to the balance of payment. Thanks to the so-called excess amount of capital amount surplus that the country has faced, though we have current account deficits, but in the capital account the country has seen a substantial growth. As a result, the forex resource in the country has been turning out to be favorable for the country. And today the capital account, we have forex resource to substitute an import cover of almost 10.9 months. So 10 months, 9 days, we are able to substitute it as of December 2025. And RBI has somewhere around 650 billion US dollars as forex reserves, and this can also meet 90% of the total external debts that India has made so far. So which substantially shows that India is in a very comfortable position as far as the trade is considered in this segment, that segment of the so-called exports and imports or forex reserves. The last one is, what is the major outlook? What is the conclusion of this? The major outlook for the external sector, by the way, is the economic survey is a bit confident on how the country is going to propel in the upcoming days. So economic survey points out that we have good optimism if you are going to tap the textile sector, if you are going to tap the e-commerce business, and if you are going to promote the so-called MSMEs in the country by leveraging this potential and deregulating some things which is inhibiting the private players to work optimally, then external sector is going to be very good for the country, particularly in the segment of we have to promote exports as much as possible. Then that will be a very good phase for the economy. This is what the entire summary of chapter 3 is. So in brief, this is the one. So let me go into some technicalities. So this technicalities here and there, we can use it. I'm going to show it in a graph-wise manner. That is what the topic, or that is what my discussion today is. So please allow me to share the screen, and then we'll be clear on what we are discussing on these components. So this is the point, guys. External sector of India, where we will be discussing about something called the external sector, class 8, chapter 3 of economic survey. So exports and imports is external sector. That is the reason why I have taken that photograph in the background as thumbnail. So what are the things that we discuss in this? We have 5 sections. First one is global trade dynamics. What are the global trade relations that we have? What are tariff barriers? What are non-tariff barriers? And amidst this tariff barriers, how India is performing. So section 2 discusses about India's trade performance, and they are focusing on textile exports, India's trade diversification to new markets, and how e-commerce business is performing in the country. And section 3 discusses about the export growth potential of India and what are the factors that are restricting, and what government of India has taken some policies in order to improve this mechanism. And section 4 discusses about the balance of payments, and the section 5 discusses about what is the way forward for India as far as external segment is considered. So in brief, these are the 5 sections in chapter 3 of economic survey 2025. So let me go through the analysis of this step by step. So this is section 1, guys, an overview of global dynamics. Second section discusses about India's trade performance. Third one discusses about restrictions. Fourth one discusses about balance of payments. Fifth one discusses about the external outlook altogether. So to start with, the Indian external sector continues to display resilience amidst global uncertainties. Overall exports, be it merchandise or services, grew at 6% year on year. So as far as global exports in telecommunications and the so-called computers and information technology is considered, India is exporting somewhere around 10.2% of the global total exports, and India is the second largest exporter of telecommunications and information and service centers according to United Nations Conference on Trade and Development. India's current account deficit is at 1.2% as of financial year 2025. No need to go into these things. Just remember every financial year what is the current account deficit. That is more than enough. The gross foreign direct investments in the country has substantially recorded a revival in the financial year 25. So there has been a net inflow of $55.6 billion of FDI in the country. And then the forex reserves of the country has increased to $640 billion US, which is sufficient to cover 10.9 months of import cover. Subsequently, if you look at the India's external debt, it is in a very stable position. The external debt to GDP of the country is somewhere around 19.4%, or approximately it is 20% at the end of September 2024. This is a quick summary of the so-called economic survey, external sector getting FDI right. So this is the first thing that I have taken from the so-called Press Information Bureau of India. Right. So moving on from here. So section by section, I'll be discussing, as I said, it is very easy to understand in the graphs rather than going and studying in paragraphs. So let me have a look at, or let me tell you what are the things that we have as far as the trade policy uncertainties is considered here. So to start with, if you look at global uncertainties, according to Global Economic Policy Uncertainty Index, the global uncertainties have risen very sharp in the last quarter, or May, June, July, August, September, October and November quarters of this financial year. Trade policy uncertainty has been very high and global economic policy uncertainty has been very high. So the uncertainties at the global level has substantially increased after a declining phase. If you observe, there has been increasing phase of global uncertainties. This is one thing that we have to observe. And due to these uncertainties, what countries are doing? Countries are going for friendshoring and trade concentration trends. So we have two terms here, nearshoring and friendshoring index. The question is, what is this nearshoring index and what is this friendshoring index? Nearshoring means, take for example, USA is exporting iPhones to India. But in order to export it, if there is geopolitical conflict, what they do is they develop this product not in USA, somewhere around near to India, like Sri Lanka, and they will export it to India. So it is very better to produce the goods at the so-called the places where you have market, and this is called as nearshoring. Near the marketplaces you will be creating it. Friendshoring means you will be dealing with only certain countries which are very, very close to you in the global trade, and that is your friends, forming a group and dealing with them excessively concentrated to compare to other countries. That is called friendshoring index. So friendshoring has been increasing in the country. At the same time, nearshoring has also substantially raised compared to last 2 quarters. So overall, the trade concentration has been increased, and they started declining phase here. This is not important except these two terms, nearshoring and friendshoring. Now, if you look at the global trade, as I have said, in the last quarter of 2023 or in the third quarter of 2024, the global trade, be it in merchandise or goods exports or services exports, goods imports. So if you look at this, at the global level, there has been substantial increase in the exports and imports from 2.8 to 1.3 to 3.5 to 3. So goods exports is 3.5% of the global trade and 3% imports. Non-tariff measures. Majority of the countries will go for non-tariff measures in order to stop one country from entering into the other country. If you look at it, so what are the non-tariff barriers that you have according to United Nations Convention on Trade and Development TRINES database? So technical barriers to trade are highest in the world, followed by export-related measures, price control measures, sanitary and phytosanitary measures and other measures, quality control measures and financial measures. So when it comes to the so-called non-tariff measures, you have technical barriers to trade, you have export-related measures, price control measures, sanitary, phytosanitary and quality control measures. They will not ask the data, but you have to know what is non-tariff measures according to the so-called UNCTAD. Next one. If you look at the trends in merchandise trade in India, so from here, if you look at the Ministry of Trade and Commerce, so up to here, this is the trends in globe. Second section is about India. So if you look at Indian segment, particularly in the merchandise trade, in the financial years, look at this, financial year 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, and this. So merchandise trade is nothing but the difference between goods value of goods exports and value of goods imports. So merchandise exports is less in the country, but imports are more. Less, more, less, more, less, more, less, more, less, more, less, more. So one thing that we have to remember is for India, almost every time merchandise exports are less than imports. What is merchandise? Merchandise means trade in goods is called merchandise. As India is not a great goods producing country, exports is less than imports. As a result, the trade deficit in the merchandise trade will also be always deficit. So it is negative. So as far as textile sector is considered, textile sector is playing a very crucial role in India's development. This is what they have discussed. So we have been producing apparels, we have been producing finished raw materials. Overall finished textile products also has shown substantial improvement in the world. And if you look at the world major textile consumption, so majority of the textiles are consumed is man-made textiles. So this is having some advantage. And cotton market share, however, unfortunately started falling down in the world from 68% to 22.3%. So rather than cotton in the year 1960s, they used to dominate in the globe. So slowly the market was diversified and the total amount of cotton growing countries started, or cotton producing countries, cotton trade has substantially decreased. So India has been exploring new markets. So in the year financial year 2025, for nuclear reactors, in boilers, for this we have almost created 14 new markets. Optical items such as including lens, next office equipments, cranes, lifts, we have looked at almost 12 to 12 countries. Next, processed foods. So what does this mean? India is not just depending on one country today, it is exploring different countries for their raw material imports. Next one is, so if you go, this is about goods. If you go for services also, ladies and gentlemen, the services exports in the country has been substantially good. So the service exports are 281 compared to 150. So this is the reason why you say India is an service oriented company, because always services exports will be greater than services imports in the world. So for India, it is greater. 281 US dollars we have been 281 billion US dollars we have been acquiring due to this, whereas $150 we are paying. As a result, this will be positive. So what is current account deficit? Current account deficit is the so-called the balance between this one and the so-called service trade deficit or service surplus. So if you take this, except in few circumstances, India normally will have current account deficit. So even in the current account deficit in the year financial year 25, it is minus 1.2. So this is what we observe. So current account deficit, only few times it is positive, but majority of the times it is negative. The current account balance, if you look at this, which has highest surplus current account balance, Right. So they have compared for few countries, financial year 2024 and 2025, and they are speaking about which country has good amount of current account balance. So majorly the countries have positive current account balance, but some countries like Canada, India have negative current account balance. This is what we observe. Next, if you look at the net capital inflows, this is about current account segment. If you look at the capital inflows has been substantially positive for the country, and this is how you are offsetting the so-called current account deficits in the country. What is FDI inflows in the country? In this capital inflows, you have FDIs. So FDIs are coming into the country, that is called gross inflows, and repatriations or disinvestments means foreign people taking away their money. So if you look at this in the financial year 20, 74 US dollars have come, 74 billion US dollars, 18 billion dollars were taken out. So this is inflows and outflows. So outflows were increasing since 2024 due to changes in the global trade or the so-called investment options, where people are moving to China, people are moving to USA. Sectoral trends in FDI, which sector has got highest amount of FDIs in the country: services, computer service and hardware, trading, and non-conventional energy sources. That is what we find among all this. And then if you look at the so-called trends in foreign portfolio investments, October, November, December. So in these 2 months there has been negative. This is inconsistent trend. So FPIs, we know that unlike FDIs who come for a very long period, FPIs will come for a very short period and they are going to leave the market very quickly. Next, net flows by FPI into debt segment. So even into the debt segment, it is increasing. So yield of government securities. The government securities yield has substantially decreased. As a result, the foreign players are leaving the market. But in the last 2 or 3 months before this survey was released, we find there has been substantial increase in the debt of the government or government yield. So if you look at the foreign exchange reserves of India are dominated by foreign currency as assets, followed by gold, which are maintained by RBI. So this is followed by RTP and SDR. So the total FDIs remittances is somewhere around 604 billion US dollars. And they are speaking about exchange rates. The exchange rates has been very slow for the India. So India has been negative, which means Indian currency has depreciated compared to US dollars. At the same time, you have other countries which have depreciated much more than India. This is what they are saying. And then trends in near and rear, which are indicators of trade, the relative competitiveness in the world. If you look at this trade weighted rear and near, so particularly rear is increasing. This means compared to a basket of 40 currencies, this time they are considering with basket of 40 currencies with a base of 2016. So rear is positive for the country, whereas near is bit in the slow path. This is another thing that we observe. And India's external debt position is very comfortable, and with the total amount of forex reserves that we have, somewhere around 650 billion US dollars, we are going to cover 90% of it through this forex reserves. So the forex reserves are very stable, and if you look at this, what is the total India's debt? India's debt is somewhere around 690 to 700 US dollars. So this is a thing that they have discussed into 22 topics, 22 charts. So if we go even by chart-wise analysis, this is what we have as far as this segment is considered. So what I mean to say is, so this is the analysis of chapter 3 in tabular manner or graphical representation. From tomorrow, I will be making short videos on each and everything, and then you'll understand that in detail. But here you have to remember the forex reserves. We have to remember about what is current account deficit, these things. That is more than enough for this discussion. Thanks for joining, guys. Have a great day. See you all.